I spoke to the Attorney General this morning. The Department of Justice will be prosecuting the perpetrator responsible for this to the fullest extent of the law.
All right, be prepared to hear this name a lot. Elias Rodriguez. I'm sure you guys heard about the murder that happened in Washington, D.C. to those two Israeli diplomats. Well, he has officially been charged with double murder of foreign diplomats from Israel. The specifics of the charge: Rodriguez is charged in U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia with the murder of foreign officials causing death through the use of a firearm and discharging a firearm during a crime of violence. He is also charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder under the D.C. Criminal Code. So this is a very big deal. Now, the question everyone has is, what is a man from Chicago doing in Washington? Was this a targeted attack? Was he influenced? Is he connected to anyone? Well, let's uncover what we know so far.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Okay, so first things first, I'm sure a lot of you have seen that video. That is because that is Elias Rodriguez literally at the crime scene where he murdered 2 Israeli staff members at a Jewish museum. Now, the fact that he's screaming free Palestine, investigators and independent reporters are trying to figure out, is he affiliated with any Free Palestine groups? Was there some sort of influence? Well, I found this clip.
There's been a lot of reporting out there about his potential ties to radical groups such as the Party for Socialism and Liberation. They released a statement of their own saying Elias Rodriguez is not a member of the PSL. He had a brief association with one branch of the PSL that ended back in 2017. We know of no contact with him in over 7 years. We have nothing to do with this shooting and do not support it. At the same time, we have seen Elias Rodriguez quoted in news reportings that are associated to that party.
Okay, so thank you, News Nation. I looked up the article, and of all people, Stephen Miller of the Trump administration actually reposted the article, and you have a clear image of Elias. Straight from their own article, Elias Rodriguez from the Party for Socialism and Liberation argued that the murder of Laquan McDonald and the Chicago bid for an Amazon headquarters are not 2 separate issues, but rather they are both connected. Again, this is an article from the Party for Socialism and Liberation.
We know of no contact with him in over 7 years. We have nothing to do with this shooting and do not support it.
And of course, you have a picture of Elias protesting. Now again, the entire point of all of this, who is he connected to? Was he a lone wolf? Did he have group support? That is what investigators are trying to figure out. You can leave your comments down below how you feel about this.
He's live for us here in Chicago. And Alex, the FBI on the scene all morning conducting searches at that apartment complex, which has now been tied to the shooter. What more can you tell us?
Now, the other big reason this is super complex is because why did the guy go from Chicago all the way down to D.C.? Was this a specific targeted attack at the Jewish museum and he knew these 2 Israeli diplomats were there? Well, according to the FBI, apparently Elias was there for a work conference.
For example, we found out that he is an employee of the American Osteopathic Information Association. They released their own statement saying that this is an organization dedicated to the health and sanctity of human life. We believe that the rights of all persons to live safely without fear of violence.
Now, according to the FBI, they're saying that Elias Rodriguez arrived the day before the attack. Rodriguez appears to have flown from Chicago for a work conference, he said. Jensen said that there was nothing in criminal records or in our holdings that we would have warranted concern about the suspect before the shooting. Now, this is very crucial. Absolutely no leads whatsoever, no criminal history, nothing at all has been traced to this man.
Prior to the shooting, the suspect was observed pacing back and forth outside of the museum. He approached a group of 4 people, produced a handgun, and opened fire, striking both of our decedents. After the shooting, the suspect then entered the museum and was detained by event security. Once in handcuffs, the suspect identified where he discarded the weapon, and that weapon has been recovered, and he implied that he committed the offense. The suspect chanted, "Free, free Palestine," while in custody. The suspect has been tentatively identified as 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez of Chicago, Illinois. Our MPD case detectives are leading this investigation.
So I hope you caught that. Elias has no problem with admitting, yeah, this is where my weapon is, this is where I hid it. In the most indirect, direct way, that is how you admit a crime. I mean, there's also footage in the area. But I also want to point out the DOJ is investigating murder of Israeli embassy staffers as a hate crime and terrorism, which means this will up the ante as far as a punishment, and it's already being thrown out there. Will he be given the death penalty? DOJ is saying it's a little too early to say that.
He has what we seem to know at this stage is he has no criminal record. He has been part of the pro-Palestinian protests in the Chicago area, but apparently, according to the records, not arrested in those protests. And they'll be looking to figure out his social media, his computers. They're going to want to see, was he inspired by a particular website to go and allegedly commit this act of violence? Was he in touch with other people? Did anybody else know? One of the things they're looking at, according to law enforcement sources, is a manifesto that they believe is likely written by him, which explains that he's been a part of the protest movement, was becoming frustrated as the body counts in Gaza continue to rise, and the protests seem to not be having any market effect, and that this was, he said, in a funny way, a crazy thing to do, but it was the right thing to do, foreshadowing this act. It's something they're still examining, but they believe it is more likely legitimate.
Now, there's a lot of independent research circling around of Elias. I mean, you have things such as Escalate for Gaza, Bring the War Home, and then you have stuff like this. So again, a lot of implications out there that obviously Elias, very pro-Palestine, super anti-Israel, but still there is this search to possibly tie him to something. You can obviously tie him to an ideology as far as being anti-that war, anti-anything that has to do with Israel, but is there a group of influence? That is what a lot of people are asking, to include the FBI and DOJ and many others.
As you go forward, with what you have seen, can you give us any sense, because you said you looked the shooter in the eyes, can you give us any sense of what you saw in him as he was sort of getting help and people were tending to him as if he too was a victim of seeing this?
Yeah, well, to be clear, I heard about that part because we were in the secure room when he initially walked in. I just saw him screaming and then being handcuffed. But what I saw in his eyes, I mean, I went to Columbia for grad school, and I saw the same thing in his eyes as I saw in the eyes of all the protesters at Columbia. Nothing different between him and them. But they did not create this horrific shooting. They did not, they didn't shoot. They gave permission. They gave the permission. And they have called for this. They have called for Intifada revolution, which is the same thing he yelled last night. Do you worry that there will be a conflation, though, of the two, those people who are speaking their mind, who really care about what is happening in Gaza, and those people who are like this person who did this horrific shooting, who intend to do harm? A conflation. I mean, they are calling for Intifada. At Columbia University, they call for Intifada constantly. They're not quietly, they're loud. They're loud. You can hear it. They make recordings of themselves.
Now, one thing I do want to point out is that obviously this is turning very political. However, unlike the Luigi case where you had news reporters who were clearly not that upset about it, you even had some people share their GoFundMe link within the media. I'm not going to get into that. They may be from CNN. You can go look that up. However, when it comes to Elias, pretty much across the board, nobody is condoning this, and they're not really even hinting that they condone it. Everyone is pretty upset about it. However, the division is, look, you can't compare protesters to him. Protesters who do it peacefully, there's no comparison. But on the flip side, you do have people saying, nope, they're all the same people. I'm just trying to give you guys the full context of what the actual arguments are. However, over at Fox News, they have put somebody in Congress on total blast.
Congresswoman Omar, anybody safe? Can I get your reaction to the shooting that happened in D.C. last night?
I'm going to go for now. I'm going to go for now, Mark. Couldn't even say condolences for the family.
Yeah, because she's an Islamist. Let's stop playing games. She's an Islamist. who got elected to Congress as part of what Donald Trump calls the enemy within. It's time to take our mittens off and do a reality. She's an Islamist. Tlaib is an Islamist. Bernie Sanders is a Marxist. I dare them to sue me. I dare them to sue me. I will counterclaim. I will get all the information I need. I will expose these people in civil court because they cannot be exposed criminally. I will do it myself if I have to. This is the enemy within. Our media, some of it's bought and paid for, some of it's not, day after day, spewing the Hamas propaganda about casualties. Even Hamas amended the casualties, and they're still spewing the casualties. There are Jews that are still in tunnels in Gaza. Who put them there? Who attacked Israel on October 6th? Free Palestine. They had their own country. It's called Gaza. What they mean by free Palestine is destroy the Jews.
Finally, News Nation researchers also uncovered a GoFundMe attached to Elias Rodriguez in a specific event that he was trying to fund several years ago about going to the People's Congress of Resistance. And in this GoFundMe, you could see actual details about his life and who he is. For example, he shares in that GoFundMe that he is a son of an Iraq war veteran. But in this exact same GoFundMe, he strongly condemns that war in Iraq, writing, "It's up to the people to protect themselves, to put a final end to imperialist war, which the U.S. Congress of billionaires has a vested interest in expanding indefinitely." So most certainly some strong thoughts and opinions associated to him in this GoFundMe.
So pretty much what everyone is uncovering, to include the FBI, DOJ, Elias is very big into protest. He's very big into defying the man. You know, it's all about the people. The government can suck it. I don't know if him being the son of an Iraqi war veteran means too much, or the links to GoFundMe. However, these are just some details we know so far. I'm sure in the near future we're going to get some more missing links as far as the possible motive to want to take out 2 Israeli staff members, but let's continue.
Center on Extremism monitors extremist groups like the Party of Socialism and Liberation, or PSL, that this man was associated with. He was associated with another, that is an anti-capitalist, anti-Western, and anti-Zionist group which regularly employs anti-Semitic rhetoric. So we know PSL. And look, there are extremists on all sides. The fringes seem to be incredibly empowered today. But all of us need to call it out. I'm thinking about the New York Times doing a gauzy profile a few weeks ago of this gamer, Hassan Piker, who regularly employs awful genocidal rhetoric against Jewish people in the Jewish state. Like, extremists should not be empowered. People who spout prejudice should not be platformed. This is a moment when we need to look ourselves in the mirror and say, we've got to stop this because the consequences are deadly.
Now, there's something else that's rather interesting in this report. Rodriguez entered the museum, we know that, after he committed the murders, which is wild. Witnesses and surveillance video reportedly confirmed his involvement. He had flown from Chicago to Washington the day prior with the firearm declared in his checked luggage. So again, this guy's been doing everything legal. There was never any reason to know or care about his involvement or actions. He has the right to protest, but to go so far to take out 2 Israeli staffers, that is the question everyone has. So that's pretty much all we know about Elias Rodriguez. Thank you guys for watching the video. God bless, and we'll see you all later.